Okay,
Y'all get
cool.
to come with
Okay,
me.
so Stacy is absolutely right. Like pacing is not something that you have to think about too much when you're just starting out. Because one of the reasons is you just want to get the story out, right? So however you get the story out at first, just get it out, get it onto paper. Then you can kind of tweak all the pacing stuff that you want, right? So for me, the way I think about pacing is it really helps to have an outline, because that way you know exactly where you're going in a story. And if you know exactly where you're going in a story, you just naturally pace it better, because you're so excited to write the next part that you're not going to like dwell on something unnecessarily, right? So that's how I approach pacing. I always have a structure, I always have an outline, I always know exactly where I'm going, what scene to write next, and the fact that I know what is happening next just makes me so psyched to get there that I kind of hurry up. So yes. That's kind of how I approach pacing. So Stacy, you have had many books come out, and some of them have been chapter books. Would you say that your chapter books are paced differently from your novels?
Yeah, what I have found with chapter books, I was trying to grab some here. So I wrote the Dino Files, a chapter book, and this is intended for slightly younger kids. So my newer readers, first, second, maybe third grade. And I really stick with dialogue and action. And that's what that's a big focus. I do very little description. And I think that's the difference. When I get to middle grade, I can spend more time doing description.
Right. So that's a really good point, is if you're not sure how to pace, dialogue and action are both so, I mean, they're just so great for pacing. Like you can never go wrong with dialogue and action. Those are actually my go-tos as well. I just like, when I don't know what to write, I just immediately start writing more dialogue, and then immediately,
I love dialogue.
Right? Immediately you kind of like speed up the story and get to the point, because you can't, you can't really afford to have your reader just dwell on all these wonderful settings forever. So dialogue and action are both really great tricks and tools to use for keeping up the pace. Have there been scenes that you've had to take out because you were worried about pacing?
Yes, definitely. I did it in the chapter book. We merged a couple of chapters, made them a little bit quicker. And with The World Ends in April.
The world ends in April. Oh my God. Today
I totally
is April
predicted
1st. You guys, the world is ending. Literally. Stacy, how did you predict this?
Yeah, right. Who knows? I did not pick a pandemic. It was all an asteroid. And it's not till April 7th, so we have a week left.
We still have a week left, guys. Get all those things on your to-do list but stay at home while you do them.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, with The World Ends in April, the kids are, they find this website says a asteroid is going to hit the Earth on April 7th, and the kids make this club to get ready for it, and they basically decide it's happening, and they've got they're ready to go. And I have this one scene where they go to the library and they basically throw away all the schoolwork they did all year, all their homework. They're like, it's done, it's over, which kids may be feeling now, right?
Yeah.
Like, toss it. So they're tossing it all away, and actually I ended up tossing that scene because they had already they had come to that decision already. So it was a fun scene, but it didn't add anything to the story. It was kind of proving a point I had already hit on in a previous scene. So if a scene is doing the work of another scene, it's easy to cut. If it's the same emotion or the same kind of plot moving forwardness, it doesn't need to be there. Each scene has to offer something new. And as fun as that scene was, it didn't offer anything new other than, we all enjoyed watching kids toss homework in the waste paper basket.
So Stacy brought up a really great point, which is that every scene has to serve a purpose. When your scenes are not serving a new purpose, we got to cut it. And like one of the cruelest things about being an author, one of the coolest and the cruelest is how much we cut and how brutal we are with our characters, right? We're just like, cut, done, you're out, goodbye. Yes. And we do that all the time.
Yep, characters can do that too. Like if you have a character with a couple friends and the friends serve the same purpose, like someone to confide in, do you need those as two friends? Can you have it as one friend? And then chances are you're going to make a better character.
Right.
If you're not kind of dividing up the work. So that is something I've learned with characters too. Are these characters serving the same purpose?
Right. So when you are actually reviewing your manuscript, let's say you've done all the cuts and you're reviewing, how do you know that it's paced well? Like what's that, you know, is it something that you can tell from just reading it? Is it something you have to read out loud? Do you show it to one of your kids? Like, how do you know?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think writers that we face this, so when you're writing something, or you write it and then you revise and you're reading it over and over again, if you're getting bored with a scene, that's kind of a clue. Like you're like, I don't want to read this scene again. Because if it's working and it's important, even if you're reading it 10 times, it should still strike you emotionally. It should strike you for the action. There's something there that you're not dreading reading that scene again, even 10th, 20th time. I do rely on editors heavily, my editor at Random House for the novels, and my kids. And sometimes they'll point out things like, you need another moment here, or
what, really? Oh my God, your kids can point that out. That's incredible.
Well, my kids are a little bit older, so my girls are 18 and 16, and they've been reading my stuff for a long time. I've trained them well. Right.
Okay, a question we have from the viewers: have you ever reworked a character?
For me, yes. I wish characters came to me fully formed, but they definitely develop as the manuscript gets going. And sometimes I won't know a character till the end, not until like I finish that first draft. And then I'm like, oh, dang it, I got to go through this whole thing and make this character better from the start, now that I know her, him better.
Right. One of the things that I often have to do is when I first start writing a book like Parachutes, it is really hard for me to have that fully formed character in the first shot. So I'll often write the first draft with all the scenes of what this character kind of encounters, but then the second draft, I really kind of delve deep into what does the character actually want? You know, why is this character making the decisions that they're making to get to what they want? It's almost like I forget about what they actually want until the second draft. Does that ever happen to you?
Yes, absolutely. Let the dogs out. They're being too loud. Giving orders to the children. Dogs are whining. Yeah, and once you know what your characters want, and especially secondary characters, oh my gosh, it makes it so much harder to revise. One of my favorite tips on revision, go ahead. One of my favorite, I'm in a high
I love it.
My favorite tips on revision is don't revise without intent. Like if you're going back through, what are you going through for? Is it to fix this character? Is it to fix this plot point? What are you doing? So when I know what a character is looking for, what a character, the want, and the want and the need can be different too. I know I've gotten off plotting, sorry. But the want and the need can be different. So
well, everything ties back, everything, you know, we are like character writers. So everything ties back to character for us. You know, we're not writing action movies. So it's going to be hard to have any conversation without character. One of the questions was, is it normal to rush a scene, or what does that feel like when you're rushing a scene? Because some of the people were saying that, you know, they try to put as many details in as possible, but it still feels rushed. And how can you tell, and what can you do about it?
For me, if a scene feels rushed, again, my editor does a better job of picking this up than I do, or a reader, because we're in our characters' heads, right? We know them, we know what they're feeling. So when somebody else reads it and they're like, wait, like pause here, what is she feeling? What is her reaction? So I get that when other people read it. My second readers really help with that, and so I have to do that pause and be like, okay, let's reflect on this. You know, this, you know, she just learned so and so died, or she just learned that she's not getting what she wanted. What does that really feel like? Show that to your readers. Don't be afraid to go to that emotional place. Right.
And I've definitely had this come up in 3 Keys. It's funny because when I was writing Parachutes, my editor's main comments were, stop explaining what they're feeling. Just like, let them, let it come out through the dialogue. The dialogue's already fantastic. You don't have to recap for us how they're feeling every time. And so I think this is one of the biggest challenges going from middle grade to YA. I had to really, tone that back. And then what was funny was I wrote Parachutes, then I wrote middle grade, I wrote 3 Keys, which is the sequel to Front Desk. And one of the things that my editor said was, slow it down. Like, you have all this dialogue, but you have to really tell us how they feel. And so,
give them a second. Give them a second to reflect on
that. It's so hard. It's so hard to balance that. So how do you balance that?
Geez, again, it's done in revision. And so when I'm going through and really, actually, let me show you something. And it's not going to come out well because everything's going to reflect here. Oh, of course, it didn't come with me as I moved rooms. Darn it. Sorry. I had something to show you, but it was, I like to storyboard after I finish a novel. So for each scene, I write down what I want that emotion to be in that scene, what the main character is feeling, and what I want the reader to feel. So
wow, that's really great.
Feeling, touched, it's feeling optimistic, and sometimes it's, bad feelings. So I look at that, and if I can't pinpoint it in that scene, I'm like, I didn't do a great job on that scene. Now it can change. Like I can change, like, oh, she started optimistic, but now she feels her world's ending. Right. Fine. But if I can't pinpoint that for a scene, I haven't done a good job. Right. So I look at that, and I'm probably okay with my dialogue and probably okay with my action. That's when I'm going to need those pauses to think about. Those pauses to reflect. Yeah, those $1 million pauses. By the way, I will point out that Stacy used to be an engineer. And I am a big believer. My mother was an engineer in China, and I'm a big believer that good stories are engineered. They're not necessarily the best written, but they're the best engineered. And so I don't know if that's just like something I made up to make myself feel better, but I do believe. Actually, I wore a math shirt today. I wore a math shirt. There we go. And I want to say I am not qualified to give writing advice. I've got like training in writing. But it's interesting because Stacy was an engineer. I went to law school, and we'd always studied writing in school, and I took writing. I took English in college, but I never really formally trained to be a creative writing major. I was a political science major. But it's really interesting what you touched on in terms of mapping that story out with all the emotions. I really believe that if we learn how to structure it well and we put in that prep work to design our story, the actual writing of the story will go so much better. It will be much, much easier. So I'm a huge believer in that as well. Okay, another question. Oh my gosh, what is that? So this is when I storyboard it afterwards, and I put all this stuff down, but and I know you guys can't read it because it's backwards, but like some of these emotions say here, again, touched, optimistic, comfortable, surprised, angry. That's incredible. Like surprised. I love the illustrations. Oh my God, you should do a graphic novel. Don't look too close. But yeah, so I put that stuff in there, and again, it makes me really look at each scene if I'm doing the work. Wow. If I'm accomplishing what I'm setting out for. So go ahead, next question. Okay, another question is, do you need an MFA to be a writer? And my big answer is no, absolutely. You don't need an MFA. If you want to get an MFA, I think it's helpful, and I think that you'll make a lot of contacts. It's a lot about the connections, and I came into publishing with no connections, so it's obviously possible not to have those connections. If you feel better equipped for the writing world, having had that amazing instruction from instructors in terms of how to craft, I think that it can be enormously useful, but I don't think it's a requirement. What do you think, Stacy? So I don't have an MFA either, and I don't know if somebody asked what that is. It's a Master's of Fine Arts in Writing is what it stands for. So it's a master's degree, so it'd be after a bachelor's. And I don't have one either. I don't think it's necessary. I think you could benefit from it. I would love to take some MFA classes in areas. We could go do an MFA online. I learn things, but I don't by any means think it's, you don't even obviously need a bachelor's in writing, but I encourage anyone who's interested in writing, learn as much as you can. Learn, there's just so many areas to this. Yeah. So and by the way, like even when you become like pros like us or whatever, Stacy's on her like 22nd book, you still have that feeling at the start of every novel where you're like, how do I do this again? Like, how do I write again? Do you feel like that? Like, I definitely feel that way at the beginning of every book. And there comes a point in every book that I write when I'm like, this is terrible. I should just stop now. Cut all my losses. This is terrible. This is garbage. What am I doing? I should just give up. Do you ever feel like that? Oh yeah, and I'm always tempted by the next idea, because while I'm writing a new idea, I'm like, oh, that must mean the one I'm working on stinks, and I should file it away and start this new project. But every project's going to have that low point, and it takes work. And I'm always looking for the shortcut, like, how can I do this one faster? And there aren't any. You have to suffer through all the revisions every
It's
time.
so hard because you know what? Honestly, every book is different. That's why you really can't compare publishing experiences. Because even if I compare my publishing experience with Front Desk versus, you know, I don't know, Parachutes, those are like two totally different books. How can you compare the publishing experiences, right? So I would say the only thing that we all have in common is we all feel that same, like, I don't even know what I'm doing point,
right.
every single project. Okay. And I always have to take a moment to remind myself, you know what, I've accomplished this before. It's like hiking up a mountain. I've done this mountain before, you know, I will get to the top if I just keep going. But the good news is you don't have to do it in a day. You know, everything that you write takes time, you know, and that's beautiful because you don't have to get it right in the first go. We're not athletes. Like we don't have to, thank God we're not athletes. But
thank goodness we don't have to do it right the first time. Because if
we don't have to do it right the first time.
Draft, I mean, you'd all like laugh me out of publishing.
Right. Another question is, how do you make your titles? I absolutely don't have that. I sometimes have a working title in my mind. I don't have 100% control over the title, but I also will strongly advocate for titles. I love short titles. I don't know what it is about me. I love like 2-word titles, 1-word titles. I think it's just easier in my mind. My husband is an attorney, and so I often hear him going like Project Water Bottle or something, and I'll be like, that sounds good. I like maybe that's why I have like really short titles. But Stacy, how did you come up with the title "The World Ends in April"?
Well, with The World Ends in April, it went through many titles, working titles. I had Tio Wiki, which is an acronym for The End of the World as They Know It, you know, an REM song.
Right.
But I really wanted Tio Wiki. They wouldn't let me. It's a horrible title. I'm like, I know, but I really like it.
Well, what goes into the process of choosing a title? Like, how do they know if something's a horrible title or not?
It's funny. From what you can tell me what your experience has been, but I have found that the sales and marketing team at the publishers get more involved. That's what they're very involved with, cover decisions and title decisions.
Right.
So I come up with something, and that's how I save it on my laptop. Like if anybody ever broke into my office and wanted, you know, manuscripts on my laptop, they would not be under the names that you see published because they change so much. And it seems to be marketing publicity type decision in the end. As an author, I get veto right, and I give lots of suggestions. But I don't get hung up on titles. I don't.
Right. Well, this was a book that was really hard to title. 3 Keys. It's coming out in September. It's a sequel to Front Desk. For the longest time, we all called it Front Desk 2. I mean, literally everybody on the team, even the publisher, kept calling it Front Desk 2. And I always thought of it as Front Desk 2 in my mind. And it was so hard to find the title because we wanted a title that was sort of a motel terms, a story about a motel, a story about, you know, Mia who runs the motel, continuation of the Front Desk story. But we also wanted to celebrate the amazing friendship of these 3 kids. And so I came up with 3 Keys. And again, it was a lot of back and forth, like, oh, I don't know, this sounds a little, you know, weird. And what if people don't get it? And what keys? And what are we talking about here? But eventually it stuck. And so the other thing is, if you have a title that you love, I find that if you just stick with it, eventually everybody will kind of, remember it by that. And that's what happened with Front Desk. Front Desk was originally a working title. It was supposed to be renamed something else, but we just never got around to it. And we kept calling it Front Desk so often that eventually all the people who wanted to rename it were just like, let's just call it Front Desk.
It's funny because I love the name 3 Keys, but it's the second in the series with the name 3, and it's
yes, it was a little confusing. It was a little confusing.
Did they care about? Or
I weaved in some stuff, so you'll find out if you read 3 Keys what the 3 keys are. And won't give any hints, but it has to do with the kids. It's not just the fact that they're 3 friends, but it also has to do with something else that you'll learn in the story. And so while I was able to weave that in, it sort of made a little bit more sense. But I want you to talk about a little bit about your new book coming out in September.
So September, I have the giant cover in the other room, but September I've got Millionaires for the Month, And this time I'm writing with two boys as the main characters, and they discover a wallet in New York City when they're on a field trip, and they borrow $20 from the wallet because it belongs to a tech billionaire. The billionaire realizes they stole that $20, and instead of giving them a reward, she gives them a challenge where they have to spend $5 million in a month. And of course, there's a lot of rules that go along with spending those $5 million.
Wow. So. Doesn't that sound fun? That sounds so fun. And I'd love to go on that field trip when we're not in quarantine, finally. And how hard was it to write from a boy protagonist's point of view, having written so much from girls' point of view?
Yeah, so it was a challenging. Well, first of all, because I did a dual perspective in that one, which I
oh my god, we just talked about dual perspective, parachutes of dual perspective, right. And it almost killed me writing it.
Yeah,
so how was it for you?
I got hung up is the dual perspective. It wasn't necessarily the boy, but it was the dual perspective that trying to make them remember who's talking, make them unique. Yeah. So that was I do. My son, who you saw walk upstairs to get his coat. He's a 12-year-old boy, so I did have some firsthand knowledge as a mom with 12-year-old boys. So that was helpful for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, we both have boys and girls, so it is kind of helpful. Okay, another question that we had earlier on is, do you set yourself timelines or deadlines, even if you're a first-time author? And I know that for you, Stacy, even though you've written 22 books, what was it like in the early days, if you can remember? Like, did you set yourself goals or timelines?
So do you guys know NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month? I'm a fan of that. And actually, I just started one today. I'm 600 words in, where you try to write in a month. I'm not one of those people that says you have to write every day, but when I'm working on a project, I do like to work on it every day. It keeps it fresh. And it doesn't have to be the 2,000 word goal, if it's 200 words, fine. But I do like to keep it going every day. So when I'm in
Even on the weekends? Even on the weekends?
Yes. But again, it doesn't have to be as much, but just doing a little. It's that habit. And again, I don't write every day, but when I'm on a project, I do like to do a little bit every day. I think for me, it keeps me going. Because then if I miss one day, I'm like, well, I missed yesterday. I could miss today too. So it's easy for me to slip.
Right.
But that's what I do. And then, so that can get me. So in a month, I can have a very ugly manuscript that nobody's allowed to read. But in a month, I can have something to work with.
Okay, another question is, how do we write subplots? Good question. How do we write subplots? I don't know anymore.
How do we do any of those? Again, if you bring it down to characters, I think that's helpful. Your main character and what they want and what they're trying to get. But then it's also how they're, reacting, because we write for kids or writing kids stuff. So like, how do they react with their parents? How do they react to the friends? So the subplots, I think, take place in a lot of those relationships.
Right.
Like what does, in The World Ends in April, they're worried about this asteroid, but her best friend, he's a blind student. He's talking about going to a new school next year. He's talking about going to a boarding school. So her relationship with him, Eleanor's relationship with Mac, is what comes into play. So it's kind of like you look at all these characters and their relationship with other people, what's going on in their lives and how that affects, it's all coming from your main character's lens. But that's how I deal with subplots. It's the varying of the different characters, what they're dealing with.
Right. Okay, so subplots, for those of you guys who are not familiar, are just like little plots that are peppered throughout your story that are not necessarily the main plot of what's happening. It could be what a side character is going through. It could be what your main character is going through in addition to the main ordeal that person is going through, right? All of those are side plots. And I agree with Stacy. I think you have to start with character and you have to kind of like think about the different layers of your story, right? So for example, Front Desk is a story about a girl going after her dream of being a writer, but it's also about a girl who is trying to run a motel. It's also about a girl who's trying to, change the way her mom thinks about her in certain ways. And it's also about a girl who's dealing with bullying. And so all of these are different layers of the story. And when you've decided on all the layers, then you can weave your little subplots. Subplots can be fun. I've been told sometimes that I have too many subplots by my editors and I have to cut them back. But I love subplots, so it just keeps it fun and exciting for me as a writer. Another question is it better to write on a computer or a paper? What are you, a computer person or a paper person?
I'm a computer. I was just going to say with chapter books, we don't do subplots because again, they're for our newer readers, so it's very straightforward.
Yeah.
But for yeah, I like to write on the computer for novels. Now, I'm also a picture book writer. Most of my books are picture books, and those I will do on paper. I'll bring a note. I carry a notebook everywhere, so I can, you know, scratch some ideas for picture books down. But when I'm really into a book, I do like a computer. Though there is totally no right answer to this question.
Right. I love to do both. If I get stuck, I'll write on paper. I like to start writing on paper, and then I'll move to a computer. But I love to outline on paper. There's something about writing on paper that's just so magical. So I want to talk a little bit about your picture books, because I know that you have actually, it's downstairs. I have one of your new picture books called Ocean. I love the ocean. I was going to book talk this during the Scholastic Reading Summit, which unfortunately got canceled, but I'll hopefully have more opportunities to book talk it in the near future. How do you write a picture book?
Oof. I don't know. Picture books are harder or easier. There's no real answer there. Picture books are faster.
Okay.
I'm not going to be working on it for years, most likely. But I have a lot more failed picture book ideas. Like I'm more willing to jump in and let's see if this will work. You know, let's write 500 words compared with a novel saying, oh, let's write 70,000 words. That's a lot more time. So picture books, I have a lot more failures because I'm willing to try them. The picture books, you have to be kind of more anal with picture books, and that every word counts and means.
And that's so hard.
It's so in a novel too, but you can get lost a little bit. But I think with the picture book, it is, you know, everything sticks out. There's not a lot for it to get hidden, but the story to get in the way. So the words, and they're going to be read out loud. Occasionally not far, but picture books are meant to be heard, which makes them a little bit different.
Right.
That way too.
And how long does it take you to write a picture book versus Miscalculations of Lightning Girl?
So Miscalculations of Lightning Girl, I say from when I started it to when it came out was 4 years. Now, publishing is very slow. You know, it's like 18 months with the publisher. And I was doing other books. That's not like an everyday project. Right. The fastest we've done a picture book is probably Sun, which with illustrations was just over a year from me right when it came out. But there was Earth, my first 4.54 billion years did well, and they were hungry for another one. Next time. So that one got fast tracked by everybody. But even that book, I show it when I do school visits. I rewrote that 8 times. So even though I did it fast, I did 8 revisions myself and 2 more with the editor. So
oh my God.
Short and quick, but still a lot of revisions.
Wow. Okay. Final question. How do you get inspiration for your books?
Inspiration is from all around you. Just we have to get better at when I say we, I think of adult writers listening and looking out for ideas. I think kids are better at this. I think kids hear an idea and they're like, they don't go immediately and say, that would never work. They're open, you know, if they think if they blew a giant bubble. They're less
cynical about the world.
Yeah, they think they're totally fine. If I blew a giant bubblegum bubble, that I could float away. You know, and they don't. Adults are like, well, it really couldn't happen. It would depend on the weather, and it would. Kids don't, and they're just so much more open to ideas. So I think being around kids and looking at the world through kind of kid eyes helps me. What about you?
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. I get a lot of inspiration from my kids. I got a lot of inspiration just from my own emotions. Like whenever I get mad about something or sad or worried, I sort of ask myself, why am I feeling this way? And there's usually some sort of a reason. And then if I can just sort of mine that reason, I mean, that's what we're doing. We're building complicated emotion machines, guys. That's kind of our job. And so we have to be in touch with our own emotions. I was always labeled the sensitive kid when I was growing up. My teacher's always like, she's so sensitive. Which turned out to be
I'm like, Kelly's the toughest person I know.
But it turned out to be a really good thing, like to be really aware of your emotions. I mean, writing is really therapeutic for me. Like I don't know how to get through the world, get through life without having that as my outlet. I'm a terrible athlete. You know, I'm a pretty bad cook, although I can bake. And so I don't really know any other outlets for me. And so that's what's worked for me. And that's what's kept the joy alive, even though we now face so much pressure And so I want to end with that. Both Stacy and I face an enormous amount of pressure as authors in this turbulent world, especially right now. So please support us, support our books, support your local indie bookstores, and stay safe and stay well, you guys. We will be back, well, I will be back on Friday with Daniel Jose Older, who is one of my best friends in the, not only in the middle grade world, but also in the YA world. He's an incredible author. He's an incredible speaker. You guys are so lucky to be hearing from him. And you can ask him all your complicated POV questions because I know he loves to play around with that. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Stacy, so much for taking the time.
I'm sure I'll see you later.
All right, I will talk to you later on Messenger. Bye, guys.
Bye.